Oh, the cove is off.
Cove is off. You want to buy that property?
No, she bought a property.
She bought a house and property in Bay Point. The lot, she owns a little over 2 lots on Bunkers Cove Road. You know where the St. Andrew Bay Yacht Club is? If you're heading east on Bunkers Cove Road, you go down maybe a quarter of a mile on the left. It's not too far from there.
But it's on the...
No, it's on the other side.
Okay, it's on the street side.
North side.
Past the yacht.
Right. It's a nice lot. I mean, there's 2 lots.
There's not many lots over there.
And, you know, it's got a street coming here, and this is Bunkers Cove Road. So it's a good-sized lot. Well,
So,
two and a half, you know.
she lived at Bay Point. She moved all around.
Yeah. She's lived in the Cove. She's lived in Lynn Haven. She's lived at Bay Point. She's been back in the Cove. She's been back in Lynn Haven. Now she's going back to Bay Point. No, house, 2 years old.
Okay. Talking about houses at Bay Point. Chit chat.
Yakety yak.
Yeah. But
well, the woman, she and her husband built a place, and he died.
Right.
And they spent a lot of money on that house, and she couldn't keep up the mortgage payments on it. HB.
They lived in the country club.
Yeah. Now, their history is buying and selling real estate. She built a nice house in the state. If somebody comes along and offers her some more money, they sell it to them right away.
She hasn't put her house on the market.
No, not in the country club yet. He's late. Yeah. Dragon Ridge.
Guy with the black shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Left. Right. What are we waiting for? Ready? Been ready.
At this time, I would like to call to order the February 23rd meeting of the Lynn Haven Community Redevelopment Agency. The first items are consent agenda items, and so I will read them all individually and ask for a motion for all of them, and then if there's discussion individually, that will be permitted. Item number 2 is an approval of meeting minutes from January 26, 2016. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action regarding the Residential Incentive Program application 201 East 15th Street in the amount of $2,500. Item number 4, discussion and possible action regarding the Residential Incentive Program application for 203 East 15th Street in the amount of $2,500. And item number 5 is discussion and possible action regarding the Residential Incentive Program application for 305 Virginia Avenue in the amount of $2,500. Do I have a motion for acceptance?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second? There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions about any of the items from the board? And there appears to be none. Does the public have a question or discussion of any of the items listed under the consent agenda? And there appears to be none. At this time, would you please call the roll, Mr. Schubert, for a vote?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and the motion carries. Item number 6 is old business, discussion and possible action regarding the change order for Sheffield Park Engineering Services. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. At this time, are there any questions of staff or any discussion that you would like to have with staff regarding this engineering change? I believe it's in the amount of $1,500. Are there any questions or discussion from the public regarding this change? And there appears to be none. Mr. Schubert, at this time, would you please call the roll for item number 6?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, the motion has carried. Moving on to new business, item number 7, discussion and possible action regarding engineering services for the Highway 77 Corridor Improvement Project. Is there a motion for this, or is there a staff report first?
Yes, Mayor. I'd respectfully request the commission to table this until next meeting.
Okay, would you like to give explanation to the commission, or?
We're still investigating the project and negotiating this task order, and then also this project is on the commission meeting as well. So I'd like to get approval from the commission to engage in this project before we actually have a task order discussed.
Okay, is there any discussion from the commission regarding this request? There appears to be none. May I have a motion to table this item?
Also move.
A second?
And a second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And so it is so moved that it's approved. Number 8, discussion and possible action regarding consultant services for the CRA plan update. Is there a motion for acceptance of this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And there has been a motion and a second. Are there any questions from the commission board, from the CRA board, or any discussion? Are there any questions from the public? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. Consultant services, what are we getting, asking for consultant services? What are we asking for in consulting services to the CRA?
My question, I had the same one that you did, actually, and the answer that I received, and please feel free to join in if anyone else would like, was that when the CRA was originally formed, that a consulting service was part of the requirements for the CRA when it was formed. And so as we've come to approximately the halfway mark through, and we have another development that's about to form, there should be some type of consultant services by the CRA, by bylaws, or however that's formed. That was the answer that I received. So if you need further explanation, I can have staff, but that this is something that is required for the CRA board to continue on its path.
Okay.
It's an update for the plan, for the actual plan, and Mr. Janke can provide further detail.
So this is going to be like an audit review by the state of Florida to see that we're doing right?
Yes.
My understanding is that we have to have this. This is not is that correct?
Yes, Mayor. Do you mind if we have staff come and
No,
report
not
on
at all.
this
That would
since
be
we
great.
have them here?
That would be great. For clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. This CRA plan update, let me start with this first. It is not required by Florida statute to have this update. However, it's almost halftime for the Lynn Haven CRA. The CRA has a lifespan of 30 years. We are in year 13 right now. And if you look at the CRA plan, there is a list of several capital improvements suggested to do within the CRA in order to increase the taxable value. We completed a lot of these projects within the first 13 years, and I think at this point it is a good point to kind of take a step back, reflect what we have done so far, and to, if you will, to calibrate some of our activities to see if there are things that we need to focus more on, if there are things that we have accomplished and we can take off our list. And that is the main reason for this CRA plan update. There are 4 core components of this update that I'm suggesting. Number 1, we would have to, by Florida statute, we would have to redo the feasibility study to include the fuel depot property. It is my understanding that this property is currently in the process of transitioning over to the private sector, so there might be an opportunity for the CRA to include this property within the existing, or to add this property to the CRA. This would be determined by the consultant through the feasibility study. Number 2 would be the review of the capital project list of the current CRA plan, analysis what has been done, and also a recommendation what should be added. Number 3 would be the review of the impact of the widening of Highway 390 to the CRA. This DOT project will have a financial impact on the CRA, and I think it only makes sense to address this early on to see how it will affect the CRA financially. And then item number 4 would be the recommendation to extend our existing CRA by another 10 years. This is an option available by Florida statute, basically to extend the lifespan from 30 years to 40 years.
I think that one of my questions is kind of aligned with Mr. Walker's question as I was reading this and preparing for the meeting. It sounds like a lot of money for a study. Is this a typical amount of money for a study for a city our size, for a type of, it just sounds like a lot of money to me. And one of my, that I just keep pulling back is it just seems like every time we start to do something, there's a large amount of money being spent to study something or engineer something, or a lot of money being spent that, $60,000 will go a long way on that park project over there, and so I just want to make sure, and I'm not doubting what you're telling me, I just want to understand for sure that this is something that we can't do in-house, or that this has to be done by an outside consultant.
There is a certain procedure that is required by Florida statute. I don't know if it would be the best way to do a study like this in-house, because it's really about the vision from a consultant from outside to look at the current plan. Because I've been looking at this for the last 7 years, and sometimes it's better to get an opinion from a consultant from a different area in Florida to review this area, to get some really good feedback. Maybe as a comparison, when the city of Lynn Haven decided to establish the CRA in 2003, I think the consultant fee back then was around $95,000, if I remember correctly, and just reading the files. So, to give you an idea.
I certainly don't want to put a negative slant on anything. I just again, $60,000 sounds like a lot of money, and I think that you and others in the city probably know more about what we, and people who are sitting on this board, people who are sitting in our audience with expertise, our developer, our new members will be coming on the CRA advisory board, our city manager. I don't know that maybe we don't know more about what we want here from our CRA than an outsider from another part of Florida. But that's just my opinion, and I'll be quiet and let someone else have the floor.
Did we go through the RFP process?
Yes, we did.
And the company that you selected was in essence the lowest bidder?
That is correct. Yes, we advertised this RFP locally in the News Herald, but also on a national level with the Florida Redevelopment Association.
All right, one other thing. Since our auditors are required to audit everything the city does, we need an updated plan, because they're going to audit the CRA to see that we meet the state requirements.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a plan that shows what we're supposed to be doing, then it would be very difficult for them in their audit to be able to certify to the state that we are doing what we're supposed to do, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, if I can just add something. I mean, one of the reasons why you need first thing about these studies is they're very data intensive. There's a requirements in Florida statutes of what areas can be designated for a CRA. And generally, cities hire consultants to crunch that data, and most of them are in Central Florida. I think that's just where the organization that does this is. And you know, I didn't participate in the selection process at all, but I can tell you that my firm represents several municipalities in this county, and this amount isn't what I would call an unreasonable amount for outside third-party study of the CRA.
Yes, it does answer a question, and it goes exactly what I said. It's an audit, and exactly where it was when it was formed when I was here. CRA was formed by the citizens of this town, approved by the citizens of this town, given a bunch of sometimes baloney, sometimes malarkey by the commissioners and the mayor. They sold us a bill of goods, and we bid on it, and we took it. And it was supposed to run for 30 years. That CRA was formed under a plan set forth and approved by the city, the citizens, and the commissioners. That was a 30-year plan. Didn't have anything to do with an audit. It was set up by an individual who was not paid $90,000, $60,000. We didn't have that money to spend. We had approximately nothing in CRA. This is a little different than what was just said. We were going to have a consultant come in. This is going to double the size of the CRA, have this CRA area, this CRA that's been in operation for 15 years, that built its money up from nothing to $1 million to start building projects. Now, as I've said before, this is going to take in the fuel depot. In other words, we're going to be paying for the development of this fuel depot. My question is this. When this comes to fruition, and this plan comes, are the citizens going to have a chance to pick apart this thing like we picked apart the original one 10 years, 15 years ago?
Mr. Jackson?
No, I don't mind. And
Thank you very much.
I don't mind. And for the record, Don Jackson, 3304 South Harbor Circle, Panama City. Was there a specific question you had, Mayor?
I'm sorry. I wanted to know if you would mind differentiating for Mr. Walker the same way that you did for me, the two different ways that that CRA could function. In other words, the advantages if it was a separate CRA, and this is just hypothetically, separate CRA for the fuel depot property once it becomes Lynn Havens, as opposed to the advantages or disadvantages of it being part of the old CRA.
Sure.
Because I thought that was quite enlightening
Sure.
and interesting.
No, we did have a conversation, Mayor, and you did specifically ask me some questions. And again, just I'm not an attorney. I don't represent to be one. I do have a limited understanding of the CRA statute. I do have a background in investment banking, and part of that background I did and undertook some tax increment financing for some municipalities, specifically using the CRA tax increment funding. So I do have a bit of a knowledge base. You had a specific question based on your understanding of the CRA, and again, I would defer to Ben and to your attorney, that my understanding is you have potentially two options here. First of all, a consultant, I believe, would probably advise you as to what to do, but my understanding is you have two options. If you do want to incorporate the fuel depot land and lands around the fuel depot, I think there has to be an assessment that it qualifies under statute to be considered an area that can be included in a CRA for different reasons, and I think blight is one of them, and I think there has to be some statutory test. Does this area meet those statutory tests? So I think your Your consultant would have to validate that. I think what Mr. Jenke is asking in this particular study is that's one of the questions. Does this property, this 100 acres, this unforgotten island that you and I were talking about the other day, it is an island, would it qualify to meet the statutory test to be a CRA? So I think that has to happen first. And then once that happens, if it does qualify, I think a decision has to be made. And again, it's not my decision, it's going to be the board's decision, and I think your consultant is going to advise you on this. Is it a separate standalone CRA? I think it could potentially be a separate standalone CRA, or is it incorporated into the existing CRA by expanding your current borders of your existing CRA to incorporate in this property? My understanding of your current CRA, your western boundary, I believe, is right on Tennessee Avenue. I don't know if it includes Tennessee or not, but it's right along Tennessee. The front gate to this particular property is 2 blocks west of Tennessee. So it's not a reach if your desire to include this property in the CRA. It would not be really a reach to expand your CRA boundary. Again, I'm not up here to tell you that you can do that. I'm not up here to tell you that you can even use, or the property, the Fuel Depot property would qualify for CRA. If it does, you specifically asked me the question, and I gave you what I believe is an honest answer. You asked me the question, you said, Don, what would benefit the city more? An expanded CRA or standalone CRA? And I said, in my opinion, that by expanding the current CRA to include the Fuel Depot property today, the tax base is 0. There are no taxes collected on that property today, that 100 acres plus or minus. So when you establish a CRA, one of the first things you do is you establish where is the line, where is the tax base today, and it's that increment above that tax base that you basically collect. For purposes of this particular property, currently there's no taxes collected on it. It is tax exempt, so your tax base would be basically 0. Depending on when you establish your CRA, at some point in the very near future, we are going to purchase that property, and then it will be put on the tax rolls. I assume that it will be put on the tax rolls for somewhere around 85% of what we purchased it for, because typically that's what the tax assessor does on properties that are not previously on the tax roll. So your baseline is going to be somewhere between 0 and a little bit less than what we would purchase it for. Everything above that then incrementally would be collected and go into the CRA. We have plans. The plans are public. They're part of our purchase contract. If those plans come to fruition, it's potentially around 2 million square feet of vertical development. At $125 a square foot of vertical development, you're looking at approximately $250 million worth of taxable value in the future. Is it 1 year out, 5 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out? I don't know. The market will decide that. So on that tax increment, you could potentially, I see as a developer that value is going to be used, yeah, it should be used geographically in the CRA. So if it's one large CRA, it can be used there, but it also can be used, those dollars collected can be used over here on Florida Avenue, and it can be used on Ohio Avenue if it's one large CRA. In order to separate the two, where funds don't go from one to the other or from one to the other, then if you had 2 separate CRAs, they're standalone and distinct, I don't think then you can commingle those funds. And hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer for a short question.
No, it's exactly what I wanted, and I appreciate your taking time.
Mayor, may I comment as well? Yes. I agree with everything that Mr. Jackson said, and I think at a basic level, it's just a lot simpler than that. If we're going to go from 0 to somewhere around 3 million overnight in the next couple of months, it'll be put on the tax roll next year as of January 1st. Feasibility of this is very simple in the fact that once you establish that baseline, any added value, those taxes for the added value in addition to that baseline are the tax incremental financing that comes back to the city. I don't think any Lynn Haven resident would argue that we want those additional tax monies to come to the city and not go to the county. So, I mean, feasibility-wise, whether it's one big one or one small one, that's a question, but we want that additional tax revenue. Otherwise, the county gets it. And we're not going to have a say in where that goes. So if we have one big CRA, the accounting mechanisms are still there that if the commission wants to see what's attributed to the field depot versus the traditional CRA, we can provide that. But it would give the commission more flexibility on where to spend that. Just like you said, as you know, everything stays on the island, everything stays in a traditional CRA. If you have one, we can run the numbers both ways. So, I mean, that would certainly be my recommendation as a city manager as one, but again, we can let them figure that out. But, you know, the argument as to, well, we don't want to pay for this developer's improvements, I mean, that's not the idea. First, we want the money, then the commission or the CRA board gets to decide how that money is spent. The idea is that tax incremental financing is spent on projects just like Mr. Jenke said, that improve the value of those properties and in turn increases the assessment and in turn gives us more money. So it's a cyclical item. So, I mean, that's where I stand as a city manager and I mean, undoubtedly we'd like to see this as part of the CRA.
And we're not suggesting we're asking for you to pay for anything. I would suggest that there's the matter of public record, the purchase contract and the developer agreement. It's quite the opposite. The city has very clearly stated that you are not going to pay for the improvements because you don't have that ability at this time to pay for those improvements.
I appreciate your taking the time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is there any further discussion or question? Did you have one more question? That's fine.
I don't want to belabor this, but my original question is, when this becomes fruition, do the citizens have anything to say? I enjoyed what was said. I've had this discussion with Mr. Jackson, and he has his opinion. I have my opinion, and I've been here since the start of the CRA. This has been tried before by a developer. This was going to put that same project, same way presented there, on the table to you, and you would be on the slate for $30 million. That shut it down. This was done by a developer before. No disrespect to Blue Waters and this, but you said in one day it'll increase the tax revenue $3 million. That's going to be your base. Your CRA increment starts from there on in. You don't get any of that $3 million. That's just a tax base. You would get that tax money anyway coming to the city. CRA regardless. So our CRA was set up with the following rules.
And I think that, I appreciate your comments, Mr. Walker, and I think that the main thing to keep in mind is if we go ahead with this study, that once the study is done, that it's not a done deal, that there is discussion and time for input, and so there we are.
Thank you for my try.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment or question? Anybody else on the board have comments or questions? Okay, then we're back to the question, discussion and possible action regarding consultant services for the CRA plan update. We've had a motion and a second. Mr. Schubert, there's no more discussion from the board, correct? Mr. Schubert, if you'd please call the roll.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. Is there any further public commentary, item number 9, on anything to do with the CRA? Yes, Mr. Miller.
My name is Leon Miller, 1508 Mississippi Avenue. I would just like to see the CRA and others get together and look at the pavilion down to Kane Griffin Park and see if we can take that and make it a attraction to the community by setting up some rules and things and have a buy a brick program so that it won't cost the city so much money. The citizens can buy a brick and put in there because it's just the pavilion is just there. Grass is growing in it.
I think that that's a well-taken point, and this is, I believe, if I'm counting correctly, the 4th or 5th time that you've come before this board and asked for this, and I think that it's a worthy cause, and I would hope that maybe the city manager could set up a time for a meeting that we could sit down and come up with some ideas and then bring it back in a concrete form before the board. Would that be acceptable? So if you would please this week contact the city manager's office and set up an appointment time, and I would be happy as well to meet with you and let's come up with some of what your ideas are and bring those before the board and see if we can't get something moving, because this is your fourth or fifth time to bring this up, and I think it's a worthy cause.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else? Okay, at this time, the CRA meeting is adjourned right on time at 4:59, and we'll be beginning the commission workshop at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it allows an hour. I don't know if it'll take it or not.
At this time, we'll begin the City Commission meeting workshop for the City Commission meeting, which will occur at 6 p.m. this evening. Before I begin, I'd like to ask the pleasure of the board. My understanding was that the request for having a workshop today was to talk about only item number 14, the proposed special events. Do you have discussion about, would you rather go through item by item and do everything on the agenda, or are we just talking about the one item? Could I have your discussion? That was my understanding. Okay. Okay. And so is it the pleasure of the board then that we not go through all the other items on the meeting, that we save those for the commission meeting? Is that agreeable with everyone? Okay. Okay. So we're going to be looking at, and during this workshop, only at item number 14. And if I could just begin the discussion, several weeks ago I had proposed before the commission that we add 4 additional events to Lynn Haven's calendar of events. And it was asked that we wait until a future meeting to bring this up before the commission, to give the other members of the commission, because as I began to propose the ideas, they also had ideas as well, some to add additional and some not to add additional. So what I'd like to do is just to present my proposal, and then I've given all the those present at the board a copy of my proposal, and I will read it. And then I'll open it to the floor, and the other commissioners can add those items that they would like added or subtracted, or talk about what they would like to do about my proposal. I would like to propose that the City of Lynn Haven place the 4 additional events listed below on its annual calendar of events. Number 1 would be the Spring Festival of the Arts and Azalea Trail, and I'm proposing that it would be beginning March 11th, 2017, because it's already too late this year to try and plan an event of that size. The vendors would be arts and crafts, possibly. These are just ideas. All these ideas could be altered, added to. It's just getting the 4 events on the calendar, and then as we move along, they could be changed and made better or less. Vendors will be arts and crafts. Wine and cheese tasting, scheduled performances of local school, civic, and church musicians, driving, biking, walking map of the Lynn Haven Azalea Trail, a spring run 5K on the Azalea Trail, the Mayor's Tea Party for Azalea Princesses ages 3 through 11 at Roberts Hall, a plein air art event, a spring paint your art out activity, and the location of the festival will be Florida Avenue. Possible partnership with maybe the Lynn Haven Garden Club, because of the fact it is about spring and flowers and beautification, and it kind of falls in with March being the cleanup, fix-up month and all that. So the second event, the Lynn Haven Hermit Crab Festival, chosen because we have a lot of those here, June 18th and on the 3rd Saturday in June for the years following. It would include vendors, gumbo cook-off with tickets for public to purchase, to taste and vote. Commissioner Shad, I give him credit for the youth fishing tournament on Bailey Bridge. Finding Nemo outdoor movie for children at dusk, a hermit crab race, a hermit crab release back to the bay contest, and possibly a kayak race and run using Bailey Bridge and the bay, with the location for that event being Porter Park. The third activity I suggested was the Lynn Haven Oktoberfest, which would be the last Saturday of September, which is the typical German Oktoberfest. and it would be on the last Saturday in September for years following, with a German band, German food vendors, the American Legion. The two posts have both said they would be willing to provide a beer booth. They have those licenses. Chicken dance contest, arts and crafts vendors, tapping of the keg by the mayor or other city official. Possibly a fall run. Another people really like to do the running and other athletic events here from park to park, maybe starting from Cane Griffin to Porter, across the Bailey Bridge to Kensal to Sheffield, with awards given at the gazebo. The location of Oktoberfest would be again Florida Avenue. And then finally, Christmas activities. We currently have the Christmas tree lighting. Several residents have talked to me about a Christmas parade. And my suggestion is having the parade in the morning of December 3rd, which is the first Saturday. Panama City has their parade in the evening. By having it in the morning, this would allow participants to be in two parades on the same day if they like, if they spent all the time on a float, and they could actually use it twice instead of just having to tear it up after one parade. With the location being Florida Avenue instead of Ohio, which would reduce police responsibility and traffic control because Ohio Avenue could remain open. Possible assistance on this event maybe from the Lynn Haven Lions or the Rotary as a fundraiser similar to the JCs with their Christmas City Parade. And then finally, the following Saturday, which would be December the 10th, Lynn Haven Old Fashioned Christmas on Florida Avenue. And this could really start on Saturday, but it could actually go all the way through Christmas with Christmas vendors, a stage for choirs and performers, carriage rides, carolers. We looked at a pile of snow or maybe an ice skating rental for children. And then shopping, pushing shopping with our merchants in downtown Lynn Haven. And right now we have Victoria's, we have Salty Marsh, we have Roberts Hall where we have crafts and performances. Mullins Pharmacy and Adams Pharmacy both have Christmas gifts. They, like to have people come in. The old coin shop, the gun depot. There's several Lynn Haven merchants, Dazzleware, who could benefit from having all this traffic downtown. The churches that are in close proximity might want to participate with this old-fashioned Christmas. I know First Baptist Church every year does the shoe boxes that they send all over the world. We've got the Presbyterian Church nearby, and then some of the others that are close enough by that they might want to participate in some way by having their programs and music going on. I further propose that the Commission would approve these activities and budgets submitted by Leisure Services with the understanding that the budget for each event could be carefully scrutinized and where possible costs could be mitigated in the manner proposed by Mayor Anderson in the proposed activity cost reduction suggestions. And I'm not going to go through and read all of these out loud, but I did go through and I listed ways that could be severely reduced. I brought it all the way down from almost $40,000 to $15,000 with different ways of approaching the events. First of all, the $5,000 that was budgeted for the Spring Festival of the Arts would not even be included in this year's budget because we've already passed the time for that one. Another idea that I had for reducing the cost, the advertising every time is close to $1,000, and with all the social media that we have now available to us, being able to be interviewed by the news media, talking on the radio, I think that we could get the word out without spending quite that much. As far as the Christmas event, we would be subtracting $3,000 from that budget if we just used the choirs in the local schools instead of bands for the old-fashioned Christmas. Decorations for Florida Avenue, the merchants last year decorated beautifully with without having to ask for assistance as far as their decorations. The Leisure Services Department was asking it'll be maybe $5,300 for employees. And, my thoughts on that is we use a lot of flex time with the school district for teachers when we have to stay after school or whatever. We can come in at a different time on a different day, or flex time could be used to mitigate those costs. So there are a lot of different ideas that I have there for reducing the cost, but even, and I just want to say, thank you to Maria Stout-Tate for all the work that she did to produce a budget that could possibly, be the budget we look at. But if we couldn't agree to spend that much money, which I don't think is a large amount for 4 great events that we add to the city, plus a Christmas parade in Lynn Haven. And studies show that when people have lots of things to do in their own hometown and they can enjoy themselves without having to drive distances, especially with the number of seniors that we have in in Lynn Haven, and the number of families with small children, driving to the beach has become sort of a dangerous proposition. With the traffic, and many people, especially some of the senior citizens, I know the barber across the street and some others, Tommy Lofton, have talked to me about a Christmas parade, and they said that they really don't always feel safe downtown Panama City at night to go to a parade, but they would feel really safe in Lynn Haven in the middle of the day enjoying a parade. So those are my thoughts, and I don't want to dominate the conversation, so I would just back off and let whoever wants to talk about your ideas or objections or hopefully your ideas of making it even better.
I guess I still have strong feelings about trying to compete with Panama City in the effort of the, I don't know whether it's the Junior League or whoever sponsors the Azalea Trail downtown, Garden Club down there. I mean, they've invested a lot of money and time and talent over the years to do that. I think the venue, rather than calling it the Arts and Azalea Trail thing, we could call it just Spring Festival. Right? Mother Nature is not always kind to us when we try to deal with azaleas. And I'll guarantee you, this year, the Azalea Trail is not going to have azaleas because they're blooming now. And they're going to be bloomed out.
In 2 weeks?
Yes. My yard's full of azaleas that are bloomed out.
Mine's just starting, but go ahead.
But you know, there's no reason why we couldn't have a spring festival, all right? But I would be, you know, against the Arts and Azalea Trail part of it.
Why the arts, I guess is my question. Why would you be against the arts part?
I think we may be trying to do too much too soon. And because you still have downtown, you have their Spring Festival of the Arts downtown. And you have all sorts of vendors down there. Painting,
they do theirs in May, though.
It doesn't make that much difference because it's something they've built on and promoted it year after year after year. And they draw a big crowd. So, you know, why should we be a copycat? We've got enough unique things going in our city that we could start something different. Now, you may think it's kind of mundane saying, well, you know, why can't we have arts? Well, yeah, we could. I mean, the list is endless of things that you could have.
What would you have in place of spring, if you had a spring festival? Arts is not all that we've listed there. We've listed...
Well, I'm saying those are the only things that I would exclude. Okay. You've got all sorts of things listed in here that could go on during a spring festival.
So you wouldn't be against the idea of having a spring festival?
No.
Awesome.
It's just, I guess, more hung up on the terminology and including the azalea and arts part of it. I guess I'm more conservative in saying I would rather start off relatively small and do something well than to start off big and fail miserably. Huh?
I don't know that we would fail miserably. You know,
well, you don't know you wouldn't either.
Okay. I appreciate those comments. I would just take issue that just because, Lynn Haven we have beautiful azaleas. We have banks of them. We have dogwoods. We have pear trees. We have so many beautiful flowers. And I don't think that it means that we're copycatting. It's hard to copycat an arts festival. I mean, ours wouldn't have to be the same. But I appreciate the fact that you would be willing, to at least entertain a spring festival. So I appreciate that very much. That's a nice compromise.
Well, I mean, you asked for my opinion. I've always told you I'm going to give it to you.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And I do respectfully disagree with you about, us copycatting, because we're not, I think that people in Lynn Haven would enjoy walking our historic district and enjoying the flowers. And having participated with my daughter in the Azalea Trail in Panama City, I know there were 2 years that they stood in front of bare branches because it was 30 degrees and there were no azaleas. So that doesn't necessarily mean you can't have an azalea trail just because the flowers happen to come. You never know when they're going to bloom. But second week in March is supposed to be peak according to Farmer's Almanac. But
No, but I mean, that's the changes that I would make on that particular
okay.
item.
All right.
On item 2, the Gumbo Crab Festival, anything like that, I think that could be a fun event for the kids.
I do too.
The third one, Oktoberfest, I guess I have several objections to that. One, again, we're competing with Panama City. And I hate to say this, but if you go down to Oktoberfest in Panama City now, it's not the same as when they started it.
I agree. I totally agree with you.
And I just don't think we're ready for that. Now, I drink beer occasionally, but it's awful easy for people, and not necessarily our city people. There's no gates on the Bailey Bridge. There's no gates on Baldwin Road. So you're going to have a lot of people that might come to these things that just love beer and they'll drink too much. And I'm not against beer. I'm not against wine. It's just that, again, why do we need an Oktoberfest when you've got one? Now you say, well, the people wouldn't have to drive down there and go there. Let me give you an example of something.
Okay.
Years ago when I was working, I started the concerts in the park downtown, in McKenzie Park.
And they were lovely.
As it grew, people came from Lynn Haven, Weewaw, all over, because they enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
When I retired and came here, I started the one here. I did not try to compete with the one downtown. Theirs was on Thursdays. I started ours on Tuesdays. Okay?
But it's this. You have the same title for it. It's just a different day. So
no,
I don't
it's
see
not
your
exactly
point.
the same title, because the other title I had registered was the state.
Okay.
But I also saw the demise of the one downtown, the way it was being handled. They don't have it down there anymore. I just hate to see us compete with a community over the years that has spent a lot of time and effort in developing something like an Oktoberfest.
And I appreciate that.
I don't think we have to. We've got other things that we can do.
Well, I appreciate that, you're feeling that, but I respectfully disagree that because we want to have our own events that we're competing with anyone. This would be a different date, just like your festival in the park would be a different date. And just because, Lynn Haven has grown, we're huge. And there's nothing for people to do. And those are the calls and those are the emails that I'm getting, that we need more things to do in Lynn Haven. So that's why I didn't just make all this up. So
Well, I'm not saying you did. We have Roberts Hall. I drive by that particular corner at least 2 or 3 times a day.
I do too.
And there is activity on the weekends, on Sundays, and things to do. We have our park. We ought to utilize our park more to do things.
We
I
should.
think as we renovate it, that will happen.
I agree.
But, I couldn't support the Oktoberfest.
Okay.
Christmas, I've got mixed feelings on. Again, I don't think from a parade standpoint, we need to compete with them. But I think if we wanted to do something different, set up a parade, I'd still like to see us consider doing something with the high schools and having some sort of a jazz festival for them.
A jazz festival?
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
I mean, each of the major high schools have jazz bands incorporated into their band developments over there. And those kids are good.
They are.
And I think we need to highlight some of those musicians and give them an opportunity to compete against each other.
Could we put that in the Spring Festival of the Arts and then have them play then? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't care where. I'm just saying, I think that's something that would help the young musician get exposure.
Because that's one of the things I have listed is performances of local school, civic, and church musicians. So that'd be a perfect place to put jazz bands.
You could get judges for the festival.
Sure.
From the Gulf Coast Jazz Society, because those are professional musicians.
I love that.
Right? And, you know, the monetary aspect of it would be the prizes that you would award, because if you held it in the park out here, you know, there's no real cost to that. The groups, the jazz groups themselves aren't that big. And I think the musicians would love to play in there.
And we could use money that we collect from the vendors who are part of the Spring Festival to pay for prizes for the winners.
Now, on the fishing off the Bailey Bridge for the kids, you could work with some of the bait and tackle shops.
For sponsors and prizes.
To sponsors and that. You know, you'll get more support and activity in the community if you involve more than just the city putting it on. Okay?
That's what I've said all the way through this proposal, that we need to involve everybody.
The more we can get the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, the Garden Club, you get the bait and tackle shops, and you get some of these other people that are involved in the thing, the more successful it will be and the more they will support it.
I totally agree with you, and if I could just reiterate one more time, my whole proposal is just to get permission from the City Commission as a group to have these activities, and once we have that permission, I will put 1,000% energy into working myself, and I know there are other people who will too, because there are people who are excited about it. All we need is the permission to put it on the calendar. That's what we're wanting from this group.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you now, I'm not voting for the Oktoberfest.
Okay. But do you think that everybody feels the way you do about Oktoberfest in the city?
Madam Mayor, I am old enough and I have learned in life, if you get two people together, you have disagreements. So yes, there are people that don't agree with me, like there are people that don't agree with you. All right? And that's life.
I agree.
All right? So I also learned you can't please everybody.
I agree.
So I think our responsibilities are to do those things that we feel are in the best interest that we're capable of doing and that we can afford to do. And some will like it and some won't like it. Some will complain and some will jump up and down and shout hooray.
If there were no beer at Oktoberfest and it was like root beer, would you be okay with it then?
I don't think you'd accomplish what the true spirit of the original Oktoberfest was. There's no reason why, you know, we can't go ahead and do some of the other things and then take a look at some of these things later.
Okay, so beer is not your major objection then?
No, I just don't think the Oktoberfest, since you have a big one downtown. And the people in communities visit each other. I mean, I've sat in the park out here when we've had our summer concert series, and I've had some of the elected officials from Parker and Callaway come here, or Springfield.
Sure.
And I've had them from Weewall.
Sure.
So,
when is the last time you went to a Panama City Oktoberfest? Just curious.
It was probably about a year ago.
Okay, so last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't stay that long. I got disgusted, to be honest.
Okay. All right.
And there was one item on my list that I have resolved the problem. When I started the summer festival out here in the summertime, I was approached about 3 years ago that they wanted to kick off the farmers market. And they felt that the crowd that went to the concert would be ideal to get indoctrinated to that. And it has. But what has happened now is that the competition is such, the attendance is dropping off for the music festival. They're not compatible anymore. So I talked to Marie, and we're going to move the summer concerts to Thursday. Because now you have the farmers market 2 days a week. The people were complaining to me they couldn't find parking. It was hard to get in and out with it. It was disconcerting and disturbing for them trying to listen to the music and people walking back
Sure.
and forth and buying stuff and this, that, and the other.
That sounds like a great suggestion.
The thing. I've had my say. Don't everybody jump up and down?
Are we going around the table, or are you just... Okay. Yeah, I'm not opposed to any of them. I think I shared with that last time. But I would just say, let me see. I like the idea of a spring festival. I think we talked about that. I think we talked about at the last meeting too, that I kind of agree with maybe the competition thing a little bit with the Azalea Trail. But so one of my questions is, when you say with the T, ages 3 to 11, are you saying that if we had an Azalea Trail, that would be the ages, 11
Yes.
to, okay, so 3 to 11, so we wouldn't.
I did that in response to what you had said before,
Right.
because I sort of agreed with you about that.
Right.
And I was thinking that it would give little girls a chance to
Right.
do something that was fun and that, dress up and they could be part of the festival that way.
So, yeah, so in that regard, I guess, I don't know that it would compete with the other one so much because that, I don't know, my daughter didn't do it until she was a teenager. So that being said, the only thing I had, and I know that you put a possible partnership with the Lynn Haven Garden Club. Couple of these, the crab and the first two for sure, to me, those are civic organizations partnering with us, and then we would do our part to support those events. I think we're kind of doing it the other way. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just pointing out, I think like for Panama City, it's the Garden Club's event. I don't know if Panama City does anything. Honestly, I don't know. I know the mayor comes and speaks, but... And
I think that it could move in that direction, but as a new mayor, and talking with the city manager, my thoughts were that we needed permission, consensus from the commission that we could have these activities, and then if they may develop or evolve into something that the Garden Club might want to completely take it over, but we have to get it on a calendar that's approved before we can... That's all this is about,
Right. And then the only comment I'd make about, obviously I love the running, the 5K, but the only comment I'd make about that is, again, having another organization maybe put that run on, because I wouldn't want to compete with the ones that we already have doing the 5Ks, because obviously every 5K generates money for some cause or another. So that's for that. I love the idea of adding the jazz. I love the idea of a spring. I love the idea of a spring festival. I think I said at the last meeting, I would like to see us enhance. If we didn't do this for whatever reason, then I'd like to enhance what we're doing out at the ballpark already this weekend, because that's already something that we have a foundation that we could build on. But again, I'm not opposed to anything other than the things I said. It normally comes the other way around, but I know our garden club is maybe not as big and as active as some of the others, so maybe we do need to jumpstart it. And I do like the idea of it being for the smaller kids. The crab thing, no disrespect calling it the crab thing. Either way, again, I think I see that as a Rotary or somebody putting that on and then us coming with it. That being said, I do like the fact that it does highlight our park. So I definitely am not going to be opposed to that. I think having the fishing tournament is a great idea. But if we didn't If we took a step back and we said, hey, you know what, 4 or 5 is a lot to absorb this first year, or this, to put on the calendar, as you say, maybe, we take some of these from the crab and incorporate with the spring, or, we definitely have the fishing rodeo perhaps in the spring because it's fishing time. Just my thoughts on that. Lynnhaven, the Oktoberfest, I think, obviously I'm opposed to that. I'd like to support, I think that Lynnhaven is more of a family-oriented neighborhood-style community, and I just don't think that Oktoberfest fits that particular model. So that's that, and with or without beer, root beer or not, I just don't. Again, I've said before, I don't have anything wrong with drinking but a lot of people can't drink without getting to the drunkenness part, and that's where I have an issue.
So when Panama City and Pier Park, when they have an Oktoberfest, so we don't see those as being family events?
I don't.
Okay.
And I don't attend.
Okay.
So and I'm not going to beat up on our sister cities, but I don't go to First Friday anymore either, for some of the same reasons. I don't see those as family events.
Okay.
Christmas parade. I see what you're trying to do, and I can appreciate it and respect it. But if you have it during the day, Christmas parades are all about Christmas lights, and I don't know how we'll pull that off. That being said, the old-fashioned Christmas, I am great addition, 100% behind anything that we can do to boost, that part of the year and support our vendors in and around throughout the city is a great idea. But I'd love the idea of an old-fashioned Christmas. I don't know what all we can do, but I like that idea. Let's see, what else did I say? Because we talked about having some of the singing and all that stuff. I would like to, if we do that, maybe even add some caroling and go through the adjoining neighborhoods. And
Absolutely.
I just love the caroling thing. So
It's in there.
oh, I'm sorry, I overlooked it. I guess I
It's in there.
apologize.
You
Okay.
could probably get churches to help you on that.
Yeah,
It's in
yeah,
there.
we used to do
Choirs
that,
might help.
and I can't sing a lick, but
Yeah.
I'd do it. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
No problem.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Mr. Barnes? Okay.
We haven't mentioned it because I don't think it's appropriate at this time, but somewhere down the line in the future, hopefully not too far off, there are ballparks that are being built now for disabled. All right? The beach has one, okay? We ought to look into that, as long as we've got room out at the Fifth Street Ballpark, of being able to put a field out there so that a lot of the disabled kids, in our community have a place they can go to. Now, that's an expensive proposition. I think they spent, probably about $250,000 on that. But again, that might be something the community would be willing to help us with.
Oh, I think so, and I've even had discussions already with Maria as well, Maria Stout-Tate, about not only the ballparks, but the new playground equipment we're getting to make it ADA accessible, and there's even beach accessibility now that you can get with a little runner that goes into the water. I mean, there's so many things that we should consider. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Mayor, may I make a comment as well?
Absolutely.
And by the way, we just talked about ordering the ADA compliance playground for Porter Park, so that's on the way. But, I mean, just to clarify, too, whether all these get approved, whether none of them or a couple of them, whatever happens, I just want to clarify that, I'm certainly on board with everything that's said here, and just make sure that the audience, and we go on record to say, if there's another event that somebody wants, particularly, I've talked to the Historical Society about potentially doing more block parties and doing them themselves. That's something that, they would have to go in front of the commission, and one of the other things we've talked about is getting 2 parade routes approved. So the Florida Avenue would already be there as an approved parade route. So if the Historical Society, or anybody else for that matter, I just had more conversations with them, wanted to do an event, they're more than welcome to do it. So, I mean, if some of these don't get approved, if somebody, whether it's a garden club or whomever, has an idea and they want to do an event, I say, you know, please bring it to me, and if it needs to go in front of the commission, which more than likely it will, I'll get it there as soon as possible, because, you know, I want to certainly see businesses thrive on Florida Avenue and everywhere else in the city as well. So I just want to make sure that, you know, while I said, and I think, you know, we've got to get any city-sponsored additional activities approved through the commission because it's a budget issue, we don't for the others. So if somebody steps forward and wants to sponsor one of these themselves and it doesn't get through, please come see me, and
Sure.
we'll do what we can. We want to make that process less bureaucratic. Certainly we had some issues with insurance. I think we worked through them. We know what's required. And I also want to get those alternate parade routes in front of the commission so they're out there too.
And if I could just say one more thing as far as the budgeting of these, and I was listening to what you said, Commissioner Friend, and I totally agree with you. It will be really wonderful if eventually that the Spring Festival would be completely sponsored by the Garden Club, or that a Christmas parade would be completely sponsored by Rotary. But Lynn Haven is, you know, we're changing in many different ways right now. We're on the brink of so many things, and if the city, you know, just by approving this, and I think it's a great budget that Ms. Tate came up with, but I think that we can reduce that greatly. Once it's approved, I would commit to work very hard with both the city employees and the different organizations to try to promote the sponsorships and to make sure that the costs are mitigated as much as possible. But even on the outside, that all the money had to be spent that Ms. Tate has budgeted, I think it would be well spent. And, you know, we just talked about spending almost $70,000 on a study. You know, that makes $35,000 for 5 events that our citizens can enjoy look like a really small amount to pay.
Sure.
And so
Yeah,
that's where I'm at on
Yeah,
that.
and I absolutely have no doubt that you would work very hard on these
I
events.
will, I promise.
I know that you would. But when I did overlook, when I talk about having a civic organization put it on, I didn't know if there would be any liability shift for that as well. That was, so, actually the budgeting doesn't concern me as much. I think it's, you know, you have to, if you're going to put on events, it costs money, and I don't think these are out of line. But
Yeah.
But my question, what I meant to mention earlier when I talk about civic organizations, and then we just allow it to happen, is there a liability shift? Is there an advantage to the city liability-wise? Because we have to think of liability when we put on events, obviously. And if it's sponsored by the city, are we in a different position? I know you mentioned insurance a little bit, but
If we were to sponsor an event, if the city were to sponsor it. If the city were to sponsor an event, then you would be taking on additional liability. If a civic organization put on, your only liability would be premises liability generally, you know, that you're letting them use the facility, the park, or the bridge, or whatever it is. If you're actually sponsoring the event, then you're going to have liability as actually organizing the event, and, you know, for employees and those kind of things.
yeah, because that was one of my concerns.
And we did have a
with
meeting
the-
about this with the insurance agent, and it was a minimal cost.
Yeah, the city
I
is
mean,
sovereignly
for-
immune, which is,
Right,
you know, it's a
right.
nice advantage.
And that's always the
So,
case, but that
yeah.
always comes up when we think about the block parties. I knew it came up before with the block parties.
We had a pretty extensive meeting with the insurance agents about this, and it was minimal mitigation to do it. So
Now, to clarify things in my mind, when we have the commission meeting tonight,
okay.
and this comes up, are we approving or going to be asked to approve everything that's on this list?
Well, I would like very much to have it all approved, but I would be very happy to have any of it approved. You know, whoever makes the motion, you know, you can certainly leave out whatever you want. You know, I obviously, you know, would very much like to see the parade, and I would very much like to see the Oktoberfest, simply because it's based on what citizens have told me they would like to have. But, you know, if you make a motion and I get 75% of what I've asked for, I'm going to feel like that maybe we all came away a winner.
Well, you know, I don't mind making the motion, but I'm still have some strong feelings on the Oktoberfest at
Well,
this time.
and I respect that, but I mean, I've listened to what you and Commissioner Friend had to say, but I don't know what Commissioner Ashbrook or Commissioner Barnes, I've seen Commissioner Barnes' position paper that he sent to City Hall, and from reading what he said in the paper, and please respond if you'd like to, Commissioner Barnes, my feeling from reading what you said is that you don't want to add any of these. Is that correct, or would you prefer not to respond? Okay, so
Don't try to question me. I prefer not to.
I was not going to question you. I was just going to make a statement that you did send a statement to City Hall which said that you were against these. Well, it came to my email, so, I didn't respond because I can't respond because of sunshine laws. So we're here to talk. We're in the sunshine, so I was hoping we could talk. Okay, so Commissioner Barnes does not want to discuss, and Commissioner Ashbrook does not want to discuss, so I have only the opinions of both you and Commissioner Friend, and I appreciate both of your willingness to discuss and to give me what you thought, and I'll be interested to hear what the public would like to add. So does anyone else have anything to say about the events? At this time, does anyone from the public have anything you'd like to add to the commission workshop concerning the events before we go into the commission meeting at 6? Any comments or questions from the public? And there appear to be none, and so at this time, the commission workshop is over, and we will be beginning the commission meeting at 6 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. everybody ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lynn Haven's Commission meeting for Tuesday, February the 23rd. It's now 6:01, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you would you please stand with me and join with me in a word of prayer? Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together tonight to do the business of the city of Lynn Haven. We thank you for each family that is represented here tonight. Bless each of them as they go about their daily work or if they're retired. And thank you for each of them who took time out to come this evening to show their concern and to have their voice in the business of the city of Lynn Haven. Bless each of the commissioners tonight, the city manager, the city attorney, and all those who are here to do what is best for our city. And would you stay with each of us during the rest of the week, bless us and keep us safe. And during this night, when we know there's storms approaching, please keep everyone safe. Just put angels around our city and keep all of us safe, dear Lord. And we ask all these things in your name. Amen. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Item number 3 is the mayor's report, and I don't have a lengthy report. I would like to share that I had the pleasure on February the 12th for presenting a program for the Valentine's Banquet at the United Methodist Church here in Lynn Haven, and met a lot of new people that I had not met before and renewed some old friendships. It was a really wonderful night. And this past weekend, had the pleasure of flying to Washington, D.C. for about a 40-hour trip, and I got to see my 2 little granddaughters, so I feel refreshed and ready to work again this week. So it's nice to see all of you here tonight. Commissioner Shad, do you have a report?
Yes, I attended the Military Affairs Change of Command meeting that they had where they transfer from one chairman to the incoming chairman. And that's always very interesting. Most of us don't realize that Tyndall Air Force Base permanently has stationed Canadian generals and other militaries from foreign countries that come here and work jointly with the United States. So it's always interesting to meet some of those people. I also attended a chamber function where they recognize what they call new CEOs in the community, and sometimes they're people that are just taking over new responsibilities for some of the United Way agencies, or like Train Company had a new general manager out here. So I attended that. They're very nice affairs. They're very small, but they're very nice, and you get an opportunity to meet and greet with them. That's all.
And I had forgotten to mention, I attended the Military Affairs Change of Command myself, and,
Yes.
and I remember seeing you there. And that was a wonderful, wonderful thing for our community. Commissioner Ashbrook?
I have no report.
Okay. Commissioner Barnes?
No report.
Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to remind everyone, we do have a TPO meeting tomorrow, and would like to recognize we have a couple of TPO staff members here tonight in support of the presentation that's coming along later, and I just would like to take the opportunity to tell you that they are very hardworking, excellent staff for the Bay County TPO, so you can rest assured that the TPO has excellent staff in West Florida Regional Planning, and 2 gentlemen that are with us here tonight.
Thank you.
Also, had the opportunity today to visit with Bethel Village, and I know it's not Lynn Haven, but it was a great opportunity to go over there and spend some time, and they're really doing some great work over there, so I really enjoyed that time over there today.
That's
all I have.
wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to read a proclamation for Publix Appreciation Day. Are there any representatives here this evening for Publix? Okay. The proclamation is, and Publix is a great part of our Lynn Haven community. Whereas George Jenkins opened the first Publix market in Winter Haven, Florida in 1930, and whereas in 1940, Jenkins, affectionately called Mr. George by his employees, opened Florida's first supermarket. Whereas Publix supermarkets are consistently awarded prestigious honors such as 100 Best Companies to Work For from Fortune magazine, and whereas Publix regularly conducts charity drives raising money and food for such charities as Special Olympics, March of Dimes, Children's Miracle Network, and United Way, and whereas today there are over 1,000 Publix stores, and whereas the 5 Publix stores in Bay County raised over $205,653.86 during their 2015 annual United Way Workplace campaign, which is 12.9% over last year's total of $205,092. And whereas Publix leadership matches an additional 75 cents for every dollar collected through Publix charities, and whereas Publix has fully embraced United Way of Northwest Florida's Live United philosophy, and nationally, Publix associates have raised $31.2 million and matched $23 million through Publix charities for a 2014 total of $54.6 million. Publix supermarkets are only located in the southeast United States. They rank in the top 10 companies of United Way in America and are a fine example and lasting legacy of Mr. George's vision and compassion. Now, therefore, I, Margot Deal Anderson, Mayor of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, do hereby proclaim February 29th, 2016 as Publix Appreciation Day throughout the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, and ask everyone to join me in thanking Publix supermarkets for being an outstanding member of our community. And I will be out there on Friday to present this to their store manager. So if you would join me in a round of applause for Publix for being an outstanding business. At this time, I would like to ask for the city manager's report and also for his proclamation for Clean Up, Paint Up, Fix Up Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Proclamation, whereas many of the municipalities of Florida are participating in campaigns to promote the beauty, health, sanitation, and neatness of such municipalities, and whereas the Operation Cinderella Committee of Panama City and Bay County is especially desirous that the City of Lynn Haven be foremost in said characteristics of beauty, health, sanitation, and neatness, and whereas the season of the year now beginning is the appropriate season for general spring cleaning on a citywide scale as well as on an individual basis. Now therefore I, Margot Anderson, Mayor of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, do hereby proclaim the month of March 2016 as Clean Up, Paint Up, Fix Up Month, and urge the people of Lynn Haven to make it their personal responsibility to join in the worthwhile campaign to clean up and beautify their individual properties, the adjacent areas, and the entire community.
Thank you. At this time, could I have a motion and a second that we accept these two proclamations?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and the motion is approved. Do you have other items for the city manager's
yes, thank
report?
you. I wanted to remind everyone that we do not have a meeting on March 8th because this building is going to be occupied with voting, and also just a couple other issues. Again, I also want to remind everyone that there is the opening day ceremony at 9 o'clock on Field 5 at the sports park. This is the opening day baseball ceremony and celebration. There's events all day from starts at 9 again, and free carnival rides, games, petting zoo, pony rides, inflatables, and much more available from 10 to 2. And you'll see your mayor and commissioners potentially throwing some baseballs out there as well.
Which should be entertaining in itself.
Well, and I would say that just real quick, I did mention that whoever throws the fastest or the best at the next commission meeting, we get 2 votes instead of 1. Just putting that out. Just kidding.
I like that. You're
Looking
on.
forward to it. No, I don't.
I would also like,
intimidation.
based on some feedback, and I've spent a lot of time with our code enforcement officer as well as Miss Richard, and driving around the city and listening to some of our citizens and business owners' issues with signs. I'll be bringing some language back to the commission again the fourth Tuesday of March, which is the 22nd, because we don't have that first meeting. And lastly, I'd like to petition the commission to add an item that I just learned about, or staff just learned about this week, and that would be to add a potential a resolution to be considered that would allow staff, the City of Lynn Haven, to apply for a grant for city sidewalks that's offered through DOT. The because we're missing our first meeting again in March, it doesn't afford us the opportunity to consider this before the deadline. And again, staff just learned about this, but I'd like to petition the commission to add a new item to new business, and that would be to consider a resolution that I've provided here. And again, I apologize, we just learned about this, but I provided it today to consider applying for a sidewalk grant through DOT. It's totally funded through DOT, and there's no matching funds. So I can talk about it a little bit more when we get there, if you all.
Is there a motion to add this resolution to tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Commissioner Schubert, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. And so it is approved. Let's add that as item 15A to our agenda, please.
That's all I have.
Okay, and that concludes the city manager's report. At this time, does the city attorney have a report?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to follow up on our last meeting. A citizen inquired about the South Monument sign, and I did take a look at those issues and can confirm that that South Monument sign lies completely within the right-of-way of Highway 77 and 17th Street. It's not on private property, and we do have an agreement with DOT to have that sign placed there. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other?
That's all I have.
Okay, any other business? Okay, moving on then to the consent agenda. At this time, I will read all 4 items underneath the consent agenda, and then if there are questions or comments about any single item, we can go back to it. Item number 7, the minutes, February 9th, 16, regular meeting. Number 8, approval of right-of-way use agreement for Roy Chester Wilson, 105 East 17th Street. Item number 9, approval of right-of-way use agreement for Deborah L. Richland, 106 East 18th Street. And item number 10, approval of final plat for the villages of Mill Bayou, Shoreline Village, Phase 1B, DO-13-6. Do I have a motion that we accept these 4 items?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion for and a second. Is there any discussion or questions from the board on any of these items? There appears to be none.
May I make a comment, Mayor, on agenda item 8 and 9?
Yes.
The commission approximately 3 months ago approved a Wayback Burger and then also a Marco's Pizza just south of Tyndall as a landmark just south of 17th Street. There were 2 citizens that came to City Hall that had concerns about their buffer. Essentially, they'd been able to use a right-of-way that the city had that was now being dedicated to this new development. Sometimes the best solutions are the most simple. We were able to talk to the developer, and rather than having their fence right on the property line, which would take away what these 2 property owners, citizens of Lynn Haven, had as a buffer to this area, the builder agreed to move that fence 10 feet over so it's directly parallel with their parking lot, and it would help the 2 citizens still have that buffer. So I think it was, again, a simple solution but very efficient, and I appreciate the developer working with us, and I appreciate the interaction I had with those 2 citizens. So, you know, every once in a while you get a good success story, so I did want to mention that.
Thank you. Are there any comments from anyone in the audience on any of these items? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Deborah Richland. I'm one of the citizens, and I just really want to thank the mayor and the city manager and the commissioners for hearing our concerns and for working with us and the developer to come up with an equitable solution. And I just wanted to thank you again for coming out personally and talking to us.
That's very kind of you. Thank you for taking the time to come tonight. Is there anyone else? Mr. Wilson.
Good afternoon. How much time do I have?
Well, 3 minutes, but if you need a little more, I will certainly give you leeway.
My name is Roy Wilson. I reside at 105 East 17th Street. I, too, would like to thank the Commission for the resolution, more so over the city manager, who I believe went above and beyond what he had to do to see that we were partially, to the best of his ability, satisfied. However, I would feel less
if I didn't come and address my true feelings, I do appreciate the outcome of the situation. However, this started 5 years ago. Mitch Richland and myself were standing right here almost a month to the date with our grievances. The commission then overlooked our grievances and put us in this shape we're in now. If it hadn't been for the city manager, God knows what the outcome would have been. He worked diligently, and I appreciate it. My wife would like to be here, but she's had another anxiety attack. She's been having 2 or 3 a week for the past 5 months. We also are citizens of Glen Haven. Right where I live now, my mother bought a house there in 1968. The house sat on those 10 feet that the city manager talked about. I know the property didn't belong to me, but I cared for it for 50 years. I should have been afforded some type of consideration before this commission did what they done. But I thank you for what you did to city manager and also the attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Does anyone else have a comment or question? Okay, at this time, on items 7 through 10, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend? Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the item is approved. Okay, moving on to new business. Item number 11 is a presentation by Elizabeth Beam, who is with Arcadis US Incorporated, regarding County Road 390 from East 14th Street, from State Road 77, Ohio Avenue, to State Road 75, or US 231. Ms. Beam, welcome to our meeting, and thank you for the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Sherry Logman, and I'm representing FDOT. Elizabeth Beam is with Arcadis, which is our staff, and but she's not going to be present
Okay,
tonight.
I apologize for calling you the wrong name.
That's okay. I know that was in the agenda, and she had called to change that, but I guess it was kind of late.
Thank
so
you.
That's quite all right. So I'm here tonight to do a presentation to the board on County Road 390, which starts at Ohio Avenue, State Road 77, all the way to State Road 75, or US 231. To give you a little bit of the project history, it was first identified in Bay County 2030 Long Range Transportation Plan. And Bay County completed a PD&E study on November 2009. There was a public hearing that was held on June 2009. However, the project was delayed due to the funding. And again, it was identified in Bay County 2035 Long Range Transportation Plan. And currently, FDOT is doing this PD&E study, which started in September 2015, and it will be completed in 2017. The study area, just as we talked about it earlier, starts at State Road 7. The project starts at State Road 77, and it terminates at State Road 75, or US 231. So the objectives of this PD&E study is to perform the necessary social, environmental, and engineering studies regarding a proposed transportation improvement to support decisions concerning if and where the project should be built, and the basic design concepts, of course. This kind of basically give you an idea as far as the project, the PD&E study. We do data collection, engineering analysis, environmental evaluations, and also public involvement. The purpose and need for this study is to enhance overall traffic operations, improve roadway capacity and meet future travel demands, improve system connectivity, increase safety, support emergency evacuation capabilities, facilitate movement of people and goods, and also enhance bicycle and pedestrian access. This is kind of a brief dates, show you the dates as far as when the project started for this PD&E study, which was September 3rd, 2015. We had a public kickoff meeting in January 19 of 2016. We're going to have a public workshop meeting on April 5th of this year, and then followed by an alternative public meeting in June 2016, and finally a public hearing in April 2017, and study completion hopefully by July 2017. Some of the project issues are, of course, roadway safety, intersection congestion, drainage and flooding, lack of bicycle and pedestrian facilities, right-of-way requirements and relocations, wetlands, and wildlife and habitat. So again, these are the PD&E study components. Engineering, we go through a lot of analyzing data and identifying solutions. Environmental, evaluate potential impacts to natural, social, and physical environment, and also we do the public involvement. It'll be ongoing through the process. Again, this is some of the stuff that we do during data collection and analysis. We do traffic counts, crash records, existing roadway conditions, identification of wetlands, and the list goes on all the way to archaeological and historical sites. Public involvement is one of the important steps that we do through this study. And, we come up with a public involvement plan. We meet with the agencies, local government, we coordinate with the local government, such as this one, and also as well as public. We also have a project website that we upload any information about the project on the website. As I mentioned before, we had a public kickoff meeting that was held on January 19. We had attendees, which included officials, key stakeholders, and public. We had 125 people that attended the public kickoff meeting. We had 100 members of the public, 16 public officials and agency officials, 3 FDOT representatives, and 6 project team members. Also, these are some of the comments and concerns that we received during our public kickoff meeting. And as you can see down the list, we had traffic congestion concerns, we had turning movement concerns, safety and safety through the corridor, and as it goes down, on the other side, it shows how many comments we received on each one. Again, some of the other public kickoff meeting comments that they were not included as written comments and were received as email, those are some of the comments. People were concerned about the noise. They were asking about noise walls. They were concerned about drainage. They were concerned about the safety of kids that were crossing the Mill Bayou Bridge going to school. So again, as you can see over there, those are some of the comments and concerns that came through to us through email. So what's next? We're going to evaluate future traffic levels and operations, review engineering data collected, evaluate environmental impacts, develop and evaluate viable alternatives, hold public workshop meeting, as we mentioned, in April 5th, and also hold alternative public meeting. Public workshop meeting is going to be held Tuesday, April 5 at community room over here in Lynn Haven at 2201 Recreation Drive in Lynn Haven from 5:30 to 6:30. And that's my contact information, and also our public information officer, Ian Satter, his contact information. And with that, I thank you all, and well, I'm ready to take any questions you have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any comments or questions from the board regarding this presentation?
Yeah, I do, Mayor. Hey, thanks for the presentation. Good to see you again. we got the same presentation, kind of the same presentation at TPO, but one of the questions that was asked there, I think I may have even asked it just to, because you'd alluded to the old PD&E study in 2009. Could you tell us why we have to do a PD&E again? Because there was a lot of money spent on that, the county was involved, and yeah, so can you go into some of that?
Yes, yes, sir. And that's a good question. The old study was done within the existing right-of-way. And the existing right-of-way, it's from State Road 77 to 389, or East Avenue, is only 60 feet wide. And then from 389 all the way to State Road 75 or US 231, it goes to 80 feet. So and staying within the existing right-of-way, it's not up to DOT's standards right now. So we have to go outside the existing right-of-way, and which will have some, additional impacts as far as we have to acquire right-of-way. So some of this, the data that was gathered or a study that was done during the previous study, it's usable, but still this is a brand new PD study that we have to go outside the existing right-of-way.
Just one more thing, if I could, Mayor. Could you give us an update? Because we've been very anxious to see the transfer from the county. As we all know, that's a county now. We know that we reported to the public here that there's a transfer. Do you have any update on that transfer?
No, sir. I'm not sure if Starsky has any. That's a totally different department.
Sure.
Yes.
I understand.
I wish I had more information on you, but that's not my department. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. Does anyone from the public have a question that you would like to ask at this time regarding this presentation? Yes, Mr. Miller.
I've been on this committee and hearing about this over 15 years, I guess. My concern is he's talked about the transfer. Why do Lynn Haven have to wait on the beach to make up their mind for the transfer? Why can't we do the transfer separate from the beach? Because there are many more things the beach is asking for than the city of Lynn Haven is asking for. And I think that's very unfair for us to have to wait on the beach.
Right, sir. I wish I had an answer for you, but like I said, that's not, I don't know anything about that. So that would be somebody else's
See, that's the same answer we've been getting for the last 5 years.
Yes.
Mr. Miller, thank you for your question. And again, it's a question that remains unanswered. And, it is frustrating to all of us that it remains unanswered, for sure. Does anyone else have a comment or question? Yes, sir, Mr. Wilson.
My grandparents, my home house is at 410 East 14th Street. That's 3 blocks from 77. What I want to know is getting information and let us communicate is just about, we never get anything directly sent to the house. I am the family spokesperson for that area there. Can you tell me why you don't get any mail or communication or anything when certain things happen? Like, for instance, you here giving this presentation tonight. Don't you think maybe communication should have been given out to the residents within the nearest acre to you?
Thank you for your question.
I'm here tonight to get this information.
Right. This presentation is actually for the board tonight, and that's why we have the public workshop on April 5th, that we can answer one-on-one question. We can give you some more information about the project, and then we can answer one-on-one question. So tonight is just for a presentation for the board. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll be sending invitations out to all the property owners and all interested parties for the April 5th.
And I also I wrote down the date that they've given us tonight, the April 5th at 5:30 at the Lynn Haven Community Room, and I'll be placing that on Facebook, and I'm sure the city manager will be putting it out for city information as well. So we'll do our best to get that information out to everyone for that public meeting. Thank you for letting us know. And Yes, sir. Did you have a question?
I do. My name's Frank Keller. I have two questions, actually. I'll try to make the first one easiest. Some of the information you rolled through, I didn't get to the first meeting for lack of notice either, and I appreciate that being brought up, nor do I know you would be here tonight. Is the website that you talked about, it is active and running, so that if I can go on there and look up the information that you
Yes, sir.
posted, that's an accurate statement?
Yes.
Thank you for that. Second question is really to the commission. I just need to make sure where this city stands on this. You are supporting this, desiring this, and such. Is that a consensus on the board that this be done to 4 lanes minimal?
I'm not sure what the consensus is on the board as to how to answer the question. I can answer for myself and then let the other board members answer as they wish. As I ran for mayor, one of my biggest concerns was the fact, and I've only been in office a few months, but one of my biggest concerns was, and this is already a done deal, that it's going to be a multiple lane expansion coming from Jinks Avenue towards Highway 77 from the west. And my biggest concern was that these multiple lanes are going to end right there at Highway 77, and nothing had been done to turn over County Road to the state to take care of whatever has to be done at this point to keep 4, possibly 6 lanes dumping onto Highway 77 at that intersection where Walgreens and CVS are located. So I think this should have been, done yesterday, some kind of answer, this transfer that Mr. Miller was talking to, and this is certainly not directed at you, ma'am. Just in general, that there's been, I think, a lot of inaction from the county, a lot of inaction from the state, and I think that it should have been done a long time ago, and I think we're in a crisis mode right now. I really do. That's my feelings.
I support it wholly. Wish it would have been done already. Is that right? Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to answer? Just so I get feedback.
Yeah, I don't mind sharing. I'm
Oh, you're fine.
At this point, I'm also in support of it. I think it should have been done a long time ago. In fact, we've talked with FDOT on several different occasions, both at Lynn Haven and at the TPO, to see if there's any way to do it faster. Obviously, there's going to be some opposition. I think our responsibility as representatives of Lynn Haven is to hear the opposition, hear the good and the bad, and then help communicate any of those desires and needs and opposition or concerns to the Florida Department of Transportation. So we'll, if anyone has anything that they'd like to share, I'm always available through email, through phone, and I'll be glad to share whatever concerns you may have through FDOT. And we have a great partnership with them, but I think this is one of those projects that's eventually going to happen. But I think coming to the workshops, you can even tell through the presentation tonight, some of the concerns that were addressed at the last workshop or the public hearing were taken into consideration here tonight. So some of the things they're obviously just not going to be able to do, but I as your representative, I will definitely be your voice as often as I can to FDOT.
And if I may clarify what I said about having to do something now, I would have been opposed had I had a voice of importance, or a voice that would have weighed in to ever widening Highway 390 and making it come into Lynn Haven with all those lanes. But that being said, that's done, and now we've got the crisis of those lanes dumping into the center of our little town, and something has to be done to mitigate the amount of traffic that's going to be there. So that's why I'm in support of it. I would have never been in support of it being widened.
Well, and understand too, it's always been that road that's not our road. It's the county now, and the county's transferring it over to the state at some point, and it just does run through. It runs through our town.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. or fortunately, if we can benefit from the traffic wraps, I don't know, but yes, I know, I understand.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, I too have been trying to get something done, Leon. My hat's off to you when you're trying to strain through a screen 3 governmental entities, county, another city, and the state. And I think there was probably a lack of foresight from that standpoint, and the fact that you're gonna bring essentially what we would consider in Lynn Haven a superhighway. Atlanta wouldn't, of course, and deadhead it into an intersection and try to funnel it back down to 2 roads with some fruit stands. You're going to have a little bit of a problem. But the state has its way, and funding gets appropriated at different places. So I mean, it is what it is. It's unfortunate, and it would be nice to accelerate the project, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Are there other comments from the board? Anything else from the public? Sir, thank you for your question. Thank you so much for your time and coming out tonight.
Sure. Thank you.
And if everyone will duly note, the date of April 5th is the next workshop. Okay. Okay, moving on to, there's no action we need to take on that item?
No, ma'am.
Item number 12 will be the first reading of Ordinance 1013, annexation of the fuel depot, Parcel B. Mr. Schubert, do you have that first reading?
Yes. Ordinance number 1013, an ordinance annexing into the municipal limits of the city of Lynn Haven, Florida, certain areas of the contiguous compact unincorporated land within Parcel B of the Lynn Haven Field Depot, consisting of approximately 93.87 acres of property, as more particularly described herein, pursuant to Florida Statute Section 171.044, amending the boundaries of the city to include said land, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
And if there's no objection from the board, I would like to go ahead and ask for the first reading of item number 13, which is also an annexation reading. And then if there are questions or discussion, we could have them about both of these items for the sake of time. Sorry, did I rush you?
Am I still on?
You're good.
Okay. Ordinance number 1014, an ordinance annexing into the municipal limits of the city of Lynn Haven, Florida, certain areas of contiguous compact unincorporated land within Parcel C of the Lynn Haven Field Depot, consisting of approximately 49.81 acres of property, as more particularly described herein, pursuant to Florida statutes Section 171.044, amending the boundaries of the city to include said land, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And although no further action is required on these two readings tonight, if anyone has a question or would like information about these two readings, you're welcome to ask those questions for discussion or comment now. And there appears to be none. So we'll move on to item number 14. This is discussion and possible action regarding additional proposed special events for fiscal year 2015-2016. And this is actually a proposal that I made that we discussed at length today in the workshop preceding this meeting. And just very briefly read the proposal to everyone. And this is based on input that I have had as the new mayor of Lynn Haven from citizens about what they would like to see in Lynn Haven. More activities, more events to attend, especially centered around the new parks and improvements and the Florida Avenue area, where we're hoping that the businesses will continue to blossom and bloom there and that we can enjoy activities right here in our own little city. The events that I have proposed is a Spring Festival of the Arts and Azalea Trail, which would be the second Saturday in March each year. A Lynn Haven Hermit Crab Festival on the third Saturday in June each year, which would be at Porter Park, and would involve a gumbo cook-off. It would involve a fishing tournament for children on the Bailey Bridge, outdoor movies for the children, hermit crab races, and other activities. Backing up to the Spring Festival, which would be in March each year, that would be on Florida Avenue with arts and crafts, wine and cheese tastings, scheduled performances of local school, civic, and church musicians, possibly a jazz festival contest with local high schools and middle schools, a spring run 5K, a mayor's tea party with the Azalea Princesses at Roberts Hall, possibly plein air art events, and spring paint your art out activities. So a lot of possible fun there. Also, a Lynn Haven Oktoberfest the last Saturday in September, with German music, German band, the chicken dance contest, the American Legion beer booth, tapping of the keg. This particular item was not particularly received well during the workshop. The others did a little better. The Lynn Haven Christmas parade of our own which would take place on the same day as Panama City's parade, but in the morning of that day, which would afford the opportunity for those who wanted to go to both parades that you could, and it would also afford the opportunity for people who put forth so much effort in building the large floats and other exhibits to be able to use them twice in the same day for two different events. The parade would, instead of being on Ohio Avenue, would take place on Florida Avenue, which would help with police control and not having to shut down the main artery going through Lynn Haven. So lots of fun there. And then finally, an old-fashioned Christmas on Florida Avenue, including Christmas carolers, carriage rides, Christmas vendors, a big pile of rented snow or ice for the children to have snowball fights, shopping with merchants downtown, and possibly churches in close proximity of the area would like to be involved with the caroling and the choirs. And I know First Baptist Church does their shoebox activity every year that they send all over the world to children, and various charities. All the churches could be involved. So anyway, these are the activities I proposed, and we've discussed them at length. So I guess I would ask at this time if there is a motion to accept the proposal from the Commission.
Before I make a motion, I'd like some clarification. We discussed many things.
Yes,
we
did.
tweaked some of these items
Yes.
to include things.
We did.
So if I make the motion, I want it understood that those items that we agreed that we were going to tweak and add in here are in here.
I was reading from the one without my notes, but I would assure you that would be the way.
Commissioner and Mayor, if I can real quick, can we, as part of the motion, can we include this as in the minutes? Because there was no supporting material in the packet. I just want to make sure that this is in the minutes.
That's fine.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may, kind of to that point and to the city attorney's point, can we, if we make a motion, can we maybe make the motion to either add all or some of the items, and then that's to add them to the calendar, and then come back with more of a detailed plan and a letter date for each of the items that were approved to go onto the calendar, so that we can iron out.
I think that's an entirely reasonable request, and
that way that'll solve. We don't have to make a motion that says
each
Spring
little item
Festival that would include all the items.
We could
And then that
do
way
that
we could continue
each
to
time.
work through so the committee, which I think since you're going to be heavily involved, you would probably chair the committee that's going to put these functions together, could come back with a detailed plan to the commission that could approve
I think
or have input to each of the functions.
Right.
Make sure
and
that
I would like to make the motion then that of the items presented in the proposal, and there were 5 of them, that we approve to put on the calendar and to have come back to us in more detail, everything with the exception of the Oktoberfest item. That's my motion.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
Thank you very much. There's been a motion made that all the events be accepted with the addendum that we would come back for each event and make sure that everyone was in agreement with each of the activities that would take place, and that we would delete the one item, the Oktoberfest, which would be for the September event. We've had a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion from the board about any of these items?
The only other discussion I would add is just to give consideration to the Christmas parade, maybe having it on, since it's going to be during the day, maybe it could enhance somehow the old-fashioned Christmas on Florida Avenue, since you'd already proposed it to be on Florida on December the 10th. Just a thought as y'all work through the process there on that.
And I would, that was one of the thoughts when we were discussing, several of us, but we were thinking if we have vendors set up on Florida Avenue that we couldn't have a parade on the same day. That's why we didn't do that. Yeah.
And just for clarification on the proposal that was passed out, there's 5 items. Commissioner Shad mentioned. One is the Spring Festival, 2 is the Hermitcraft Festival, 3 is the Oktoberfest, 4 is the Christmas Parade, and 5 is the Old-Fashioned Christmas. And all of these events are in the motion except for number 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my second.
Any question or input from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Arlene Harrison, 904 Michigan Avenue, or actually, I spend most of my time at 831 Florida Avenue.
Which would be Roberts Hall.
Which would be Roberts Hall, and as a representative of Roberts Hall and of the Independent Order of the Odd Fellows, we would support these events taking place, and we would be very active in trying to promote Florida Avenue and the businesses there, and we would definitely involve ourselves in these events.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from anyone? And there appear to be none. Okay, Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
No.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
No.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And the motion is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. So excited. Moving on to
15.
Thank you. I got so excited I forgot the number. Number 15, Resolution 2016-02-641, Roadside Beautification Assistance Joint Participation Agreement with FDOT for landscaping of Highway 77. Could you read that resolution, please, Mr. Schubert?
Yes. Resolution 2016-02-641, a resolution by the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, authorizing the mayor to enter into a roadside beautification assistant joint participation agreement for the landscaping of Highway 77. And we have staff here.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yes, this is a joint participation agreement to do some landscaping on Highway 77. The area would be just south of the Bailey Bridge down to 17th Street. That encompasses our CRA district. The FDOT is willing to give us $200,000 towards this venture. And although there is no specific match, the city is responsible for design and any hardscape. For this particular project, the hardscape is going to be grates, because this is strictly the installation of trees, no shrubbery, and it will require tree grates, and potentially some widening of sidewalks in places to encompass those tree grates, and then still allow your handicap, ADA accessibility in the area. This will also include irrigation, which is part of the DOT portion. We can't guarantee that every single block is going to have trees, because the design phase of it is going to determine there are some large stormwater pipes underneath some of the right-of-way out here. But hopefully we'll be doing a large portion of it.
Okay.
So this would be on the east and west right-of-way of 77 from the foot of the Bailey Bridge to 17th Street, and it would certainly, we all know Lynn Haven's the best city in Bay County, but it was certainly on 77 to note that you're in a special place, clustering trees that could also provide shade at some point and aesthetics that you really can't find anywhere else on 77. So.
And my understanding, the reason these trees were suggested, I believe they're the crepe myrtles and cathedral oaks from what I'm reading, is because with the FDOT grants, you cannot have trees that are shedding leaves and that kind of thing on the road. So it has to be a specific kind of tree. Is that correct?
Well, Mr. Jenke was very progressive in talking to DOT before we even reached this point, and what they would allow to put us on the right-of-ways, yes.
Thank you.
Sizes and et cetera, et cetera.
Is it my understanding that project will be done in 4 phases?
This first phase would have to be completed by June 30th of 2017, so we're about 17 months away. And after the design is completed, will tell us really how many phases it will require.
The money we're going to get from the state, is that going to be first phase only?
Yes, at this point
So
in
that
time.
we will get additional grants for second, third, and fourth phases?
Well, there's no guarantees at this point in time, but this money will take us as far as it can get us, and then we would definitely look into some future funding.
Has there been any discussion, I'm sure this is not their first rodeo, about how many, what kind of design and hardscape cost, that's the portion we're going to have to pay, based on a $200,000 project? Do you have any number that's even fiscally responsible? Would it cost us $50,000 or $80,000 out of pocket? I mean,
I'm going to look towards Ben. Do you recall that, Ben?
For planning purposes, and in terms of engineering or soft cost, a good measurement is around 10% of the overall cost. But when it comes to a very specific project that may have some engineering challenges, that number may go up.
so the design and hardscape costs are really unknown at this juncture. We're just hoping there'll be a certain amount.
That is correct. And I may add, Highway 77, we all know, is a DOT road. They own the road. We have to play by their rules. They tell us what would qualify within their right-of-way. So it has been a challenge to even get to this point because we only have 8 feet between the curb of the road and the edge of the right-of-way, and it's quite a challenge to add at least a little bit of landscaping to this corridor.
Sure. Okay.
All right, now, is the hard cost to the city going to be paid out of CRA, or is it going to be general funds for the city?
I'm proposing to pay with CRA funds for this.
All right, CRA.
Other comments or questions? Okay, my understanding is that this item is just giving the authority to enter into an agreement, but it's not actually entering into the agreement. Is that correct, City Attorney?
It gives you the authority to enter into the agreement. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so do we need to take action on this tonight?
If we need to pass the resolution.
Okay, is there a motion to pass this resolution?
Also move.
Second.
Is there any discussion from the board? Are there any points of discussion or questions from the audience? Okay, yes, ma'am, Ms. Arlene.
That particular stretch of highway is ugly, ugly. You come across that Bailey Bridge and all the way till, well, there's no landscaping. It's ugly. It really needs it.
Thank you for that input. That helps me a lot. Any other comment or question? Right here. Yes, Ms. Linda, and then I'll get you next.
Even though we may enter into an agreement now, you know, we're not going to be able to do any construction until we have the design completed.
Right.
So enter into the agreement now isn't going to lock us into spending that money for construction. Until there's actual construction taking place, then we could always gracefully remove ourselves from the agreement if we needed to.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, Mayor, City Commissioners, City Manager, I'm Martha Frank Renfro. I live on the corner of 8th and New York on the west side of town. In the paper a week or so ago was an article that really caught my eye. This article said the Macmillan Library was going to be moved to the Monument Park, which is on 8th and Georgia. I would like to state my objection to that move. First of all, that park was planned in 1920. It was planned as a memorial to the veterans of the Confederate Army.
Union Army.
Those people raised money. Some of the veterans even took part of their monthly pensions and for 4 years donated money to build that monument. In 1920, they had finally raised enough money to have the statue made. And a firm in Columbus, Ohio, made the monument. It was erected in this park. Members of the DAR had a lot to do with it. In fact, they even were given a parcel of land to build a little hall on that later burned. That monument has been a noteworthy and source of information and pride for the city of Lynn Haven, at least for some of us. In 1959, it was rededicated to all members of the armed services who lost their lives in battle. It's a beautiful little park. And I don't want to see it changed. You know? It's written up in journals. Ripley's, believe it or not, even had an article about it. It is the only monument to the Union soldier south of the Mason-Dixon line. Now, some people, when they hear that, make it a point when they're passing through to go by and see that. A lot of children play there. Lynn Haven Elementary School uses that park for their egg hunts. If we add other structures to that little park, it's going to be so crowded, it takes away from the dignity and the meaning of that monument. And I pray, gentlemen and lady, that you will reconsider that motion. In fact, doing a survey of the neighborhood around that park, and I'm talking about 5 blocks around the park, I found one person who had no interest, but then she said, I ain't going to do nothing for nobody.
And ma'am, if I may respectfully thank you so much for coming and bringing this to our attention. If you would, if you would hold the thought just for a few moments, because we're finishing this other resolution, and then we'll come right back to what you're asking about and discuss it with the commission, because we're in the middle of another.
There is not room, Mayor Anderson.
Okay, if you don't mind, just for a moment, if you have time, give us about 5 minutes to get through this resolution that we're on, and then we will come back to what you're asking and we'll discuss it. Is that acceptable?
I would like that very much.
Thank you. We'll discuss it in just a moment.
Thank you for your attention and your time.
Thank you for coming. Okay, going back to where we were on the, help me with this, the resolution for the roadside assistance joint participation. We've had a motion and a second, and is there any other discussion before we vote to adopt the resolution? This is not binding us to continue with the project, only to adopt the resolution. Any more questions or discussion? Okay.
May I just publicly thank Mrs. Lucanti and Mr. Janke for tracking down a couple $100,000 for this project.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so the resolution has passed. Okay, at this time we move to the final item, which is public commentary, and
We have 15A to deal with.
I'm sorry, 15A, thank you very much. 15A would be the additional resolution that Mr. Schubert added, and Mr. Schubert, if you would please read the resolution at this time.
Resolution 2016-02-642, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, to support construction of sidewalks on 5th Street between Tennessee Avenue and Kensaw Park, Tennessee Avenue between State Road 390 and 5th Street, 14th Street between Tennessee Avenue and Maryland Avenue, Minnesota Avenue between State Road 390 and 17th Street, East 17th Street between Iowa Avenue and Mississippi Avenue, and at Sheffield Park along 9th Street, 10th Street, and Pennsylvania Avenue, with transportation alternatives funding and providing for an effective date. And again, this is a deadline we found out about late, compounded with the fact we don't have the first meeting in March. This is petitioning the Commission for permission to apply for a Transportation Alternatives Program grant to construct these sidewalks. These sidewalks have been identified in the CRA in previous discussions that need to be done, and this does not require a match. So this is just petitioning the Commission to apply for this money with DOT. The Commission would certainly have, like with the previous resolution, the opportunity to approve the project as it's designed, assuming we get the money at a later date.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, is there a motion that we adopt this resolution? Is there a second? Thank you. Are there questions or discussion from the board? Questions or discussion from the public? There appears to be none. Mr. Schubert, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ashbrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Shad?
Aye.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. And so the motion has passed for the resolution. Okay, item number 16 is public commentary, which is a time for citizens to discuss any item or any concern or question you might have. And if I could return to the library issue, thank you so much for bringing your question to the board. And it has been decided that the library would be moved, but a couple of the concerns, and I'll let others weigh in from the board as well if they would like to, but the library would not be placed on the property which is the monument. It would be placed on, it's a city-owned piece of property between the parking lot and where the monument is. And as the city is currently selling a lot of pieces of property, it could potentially have become private property with, you know, anything built upon it. And the way that it is now, the McMullen Library would be adjacent to the park, but certainly not in the park. And your comments were so well taken about the children playing there and children, you know, being part of it and people wanting to see the statue, because it's very dear to me too. I used to walk home beside it and I still go by it quite often because I love it. And but what the Heritage Society is discussing doing with the McMullen Library is keeping that historical value of that old building. It would become a place for artifacts, possibly Civil War artifacts, historical artifacts. It would not be embellished in any way that wouldn't be attractive or conducive to the atmosphere that the statue has portrayed. But you know, you're certainly welcome if you'd like to make an appointment and come by and talk with the city manager or myself or any members of this board. Possibly members of the Heritage Society could give you more information that would make you feel more comfortable about what the plans are. They meet the first Thursday of every month. But the intent is to preserve the integrity of that beautiful monument, to preserve the integrity of the library, and to make it a place where children can learn about the history of Lynn Haven and preserve all that you were just talking about. So hopefully that would help. The library would be on the 50-foot wide lot between the parking lot and the property, which is the statue, which is the park. It would not infringe in any way on the Memorial Park. Next to the alley? In between Georgia Avenue and the alley, that lot that's in between there. The parking lot would be to the south and the monument to the north, and it would be the lot in between the parking lot and the monument. But it would not infringe on the property.
The parking lot has 3 parking spaces.
Maybe we could meet sometime during the next few days and discuss it further and let you see.
If you place that on Georgia Street, the monument, the library between the monument and the group of azaleas facing Georgia Street?
No, ma'am. It's on the property that's north of the parking lot and south of the lot that the monument is on. In between. Going
in
north
between the azaleas and the monument?
The vacant lot. No, not.
If it's placed there, you're going to have to cut down the only big oak tree on the lot.
There's already a plan for removal of a couple of the older pine trees that are that won't, it's not the oak trees. And I would love for you to come by the mayor's office or the city manager's office and look at the plan, and I think you'll be pleased with it. I think you may have gotten some information that's not quite correct.
So you're going to place it north of the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am.
That's not a very wide place. And the ladies in the garden club have planted some of the beautiful plants there.
It is beautiful.
And they will have to be cut down.
No, the
Yes,
the
ma'am,
plan is to
because there
preserve.
is not room. If you go and you actually look at that, there isn't room. Those crepe myrtle go in a kind of curve around, and I know because I live behind it.
And ma'am, I appreciate...
Across from the alley.
I appreciate with great respect all that you've said, but for the interest of time, we'll have to stop with this particular discussion.
Don't you have other property that it could be placed on? We have a lot of parks in Lynn Haven.
Well,
we have a lot of spare land.
I agree with you.
Could not this park, this library, be placed on one of those parks?
Well, this decision
What
was
about
made...
across the street?
Ma'am, if you don't
where
mind...
it was originally built?
Ma'am, I have to respectfully ask you,
our library
we'll have to
has
discontinue
that
at this
spot
time,
now.
okay?
But it could be placed in another spot, which is the proper place for it.
And we can
Because it
discuss
was
that
the
with you.
Macmillan
Ma'am, I
Library.
respectfully ask if you would take your seat, and we could discuss more of it. I respectfully ask you to take your seat, and thank you so much for bringing your concerns this
I
evening.
wish you would take another look at that little
We
park.
certainly will be glad to look at it and talk with you. Thank you.
And keep in mind what it means to that neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am.
And the school.
Thank you.
The kids won't have a place to play.
Thank you.
School can't have their elk hunts.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming, and we'll discuss it some more. Is there anyone else that has an issue you'd like to bring this evening? Yes, ma'am.
I don't have an issue, but I just wanted to let you all know that I have the miler for the plat that you all voted on here tonight. If Mayor and the commissioners and the attorney could sign it before they leave tonight.
Yes.
Thank
Be
you.
happy to sign this.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question or concern this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Donald Lanier. I live at 1818 Virginia Avenue, apartment B. And there's a young lady lives next door to me named Pam Lowry, and she'll be a part of my discussion. She's in apartment A. She has 3 very small children. She couldn't come to the meeting, but we have seen snakes, mice, and possums in our yard, and we believe it's coming from next door. I have not called code enforcement because I've lived there since July, and apparently they haven't even looked at it because nothing's being done. I have pictures with me. If you'd like to look at them after the meeting, I'll be glad to show them to you.
Okay.
Or if you'd like to meet me at my apartment, I'd be glad for you to look at what I have to look at every day. Okay?
You're at 1818 Virginia Avenue?
Apartment B.
Okay, apartment B. And I'm sure that the city manager will direct the appropriate code enforcement personnel to check it out.
Sure, and we keep a spreadsheet, and it's available public record. You can see anything that has been code enforced or that's on the list. What I like to remind...
It hasn't been on the list. It's not on the list.
Have you looked at the list?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we'd be happy to take a look at it and get that on the list. What I'd also like to do is take this opportunity to remind folks that there may be something on that list that's been on there for several weeks, but these folks get due process. There's an actual process, and in fact, we've got a meeting the first week of April with 5 items on it that folks have disputed what code enforcement has said they need to do, but we will certainly be out there and we'll look into it.
Okay. I'm sure some of you recognize me. I was here last year concerning my water bill that the city manager adjusted. Said I used 49,000 gallons. Well, I have some other concerns about comments were made during that period of time. And I went and got me a copy of my water bill. I moved into the apartment on June the 29th of 2015. July the 1st, I believe, until July the 7th, I was in the hospital. But I noticed on my bill, the water meter's read on 720. So I'm only there about 15 days at the most. And I use 2,300 gallons. I'm not here to dispute the bill, but I want to show you some disparity here. Well, you changed my meter, and it went down to 1,500 and has stayed consistently below 1,500 since then. So there's a little bit of inconsistency in the bill, and I'm not here to, it's paid, I don't even care about it. But I want to address another issue. As I said, my next door neighbor, that was in September last year, I got the bill for 49,000 gallons of water. The very next month, my next door neighbor got a bill for 22,000 gallons of water. And Mr. Schubert adjusted that, and we appreciate that. But my concern are comments and accusations made by people in City Hall. I think they need to be trained how to deal with the public. Just to give you an example, Mr. James Finch is my landlord, and during our discussions, mine, and then Pam with hers at another time, became aware that James Finch was our landlord. And the accusation was made, perhaps your landlord is stealing your water. I think it's very uncalled for. The other thing they told Pam, because Mr. Schubert knows and y'all do because I talked to you last year about it. The other thing that the city water department told my next door neighbor, we know what you're doing. You're watering your lawn between 6 in the morning and 6 at night every Saturday and Sunday. And never put a drop of water on that lawn. So my point is, they need to be trained how to deal with the public. If I come to you with a problem, let's deal with the problem. Let's don't make accusations and innuendos, okay? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, I can look into that, and if that's what was said, I mean, I can look into it. What we have a way to measure, and it could have been a bad meter like it sounds like on your case, but we have a way to identify sometimes when the water's being used.
I understand.
So I don't know what they said saying you're using it, or they said it's being used during these hours. When they spoke to me,
they said we were watering our yard.
okay, when they spoke to me, they didn't say that. They said that we've identified when it's being used. So, I mean, and that's very important too, because there could be a leak on our side, there could be a leak on your side.
And that's how, when we discussed mine, that was a discussion on my side or the other side. No one to this day has told me why we got such high water bills. Now, I would like to propose, I don't know the proper way to go about it, because this is only my second commission meeting I've ever been to. I would like to propose an independent audit of all water bills in the city of Lynn Haven for inconsistencies, as I just showed you my inconsistency. How do you do that? I don't know what you do, but I think it needs to be done. Because I can assure you that if me and my next door neighbor, who only lived there a few months, got erroneous water bills, I'm sure some of your other citizens have too.
And I've seen it go both ways. I think in your situation, the fact that it was new construction had a lot to do with it, but we do those as a regular routine maintenance. We check those. We have a program where we are replacing water meters. And certainly we encourage. We also have a program that shows, that identifies, and not early enough in your situation because you probably didn't have enough history, but it shows if you're regularly using 1,500 gallons, for example, and we get 6,000, that's a flag, and we'll go out there and look at it. But
yeah, when I asked them to come out and look at my water meter, yeah, we'll charge you $25. No one was interested in solving the problem. We talked about it. I have one other issue I'd like to bring up. I don't know what my time is.
If you can move
The
along.
last time I was here, I discussed the deposits. There's a $150 deposit. And I asked the city attorney if he could perhaps look into the law concerning deposits. Never heard nothing. I did hear from somebody in the water department telling me that the reason you keep my money for 4 years is because other people leave Lynn Haven and don't pay their final bill. Not my concern. I really don't care. That's my $100, and after 1 year, I want it back. And I would recommend that Lynn Haven update how they charge deposits. I've got an 835 credit score. I walk in there, Mr. Lanier, no, I need my water turned it'll be $150.
Okay,
Joe
Ms.
Smo walks in there, and his credit score's 200. What's his water deposit? $150. Now, who's going to pay the water bill?
Mr. Lanier, I've taken some careful notes on everything that you said, and I know the city manager has listened to what you said. And so if I'm not being, I hope I'm not being disrespectful of you, but you've passed several minutes on the time, and there's other people to speak. And so if you'd like to discuss this further, you're welcome to make an appointment to come to my office, or you're welcome to come and make an appointment with Mr. Schubert, and maybe we can find a resolution. I think some of your suggestions were very well taken. And thank you for coming. Are there any other, yes, Ms. Harris? Thank you.
Okay. As a member of the Lynn Haven Heritage Society, we've resolved that in March, with your Clean Up, Fix Up, Paint Up campaign underway, we are going to work in both the cemeteries, the 8th Court Cemetery and the Mount Hope cemeteries, with our focus being on basically the historical markers, with the Oddfellows markers, veterans of both the GAR and the Confederate markers. And that's our main focus. We would like to coordinate our efforts with what the city is going to do, so we could maybe be working on the same Saturday or the same day. So we would like to know when the city is planning to work in those two cemeteries.
Thank you so much. Did you have a reply to
I can
that?
certainly get back with you. We've got a lot of efforts underway, but I'd certainly like to coordinate that and get back with you if that's okay.
And I know the American Legion has asked also to coordinate a Saturday with the city. I just got that call yesterday, and they want to go in and refurbish the flagpoles before Memorial Day
We'd be
comes
very
around.
happy to do it the same day.
So
as
they're
yes.
interested. The American
That
Legion
would be
Post
good for us.
356.
Thank you.
Any other comments or commentary? Okay, at this time, this meeting of the Lynn Haven City Commission is adjourned. Thank you so much for attending tonight.